はい、今日は友達のジョージ君に来てもらってます。Welcome to my channel, George.
Nice to meet you, Justin. Thanks for having me here.
このジョージ君は実は4カ国語話せてとてもマルチリンガルなので、それを英語で聞いていきたいと思います。So you can speak 4 languages. I should call you multilingualist. So how did you become multilingual? Can you speak with your background?
Yeah, so my name is George, and I was born in Hong Kong, but I live mainly in Canada. My parents are from both Hong Kong and Taiwan, so I also speak Cantonese and Mandarin, and on top of that, I also speak Japanese. 僕はジョージです。香港で生まれ、カナダで育ちです。けど両親は香港人と台湾人で、ですから広東語と中国語も話せて、それから高校生時代で日本語を勉強していて、日本語も話せます。
すごいね。すごい話せるね。じゃあ、あともちろん今、英語は話したけども、あと香港語、Cantonese でちょっと何か。
大家好，我係 George， 咁我喺香港出世嘅，不過我爹哋媽咪咧就係香港人同埋台灣人啦，咁所以我廣東話同埋國語咧都識講嘅。咁我喺加拿大大嘅，咁我喺嗰度住咗20幾年啦。咁其實我之前咧就唔記得晒啲中文嘅，所以英文先至係我嘅母語。係啦，咁我亦都可以講到日文啦，因為我喺高中嘅時候我又開始學日文嘅。
Oh, I don't understand any Cantonese. Wow, that's really good. So, of course you can speak Mandarin.
Yes, I can. 所以大家好，我叫 George。那我爸爸妈妈呢是從香港跟台灣來的，所以呢我會講廣東話跟中文。那我在香港出生。然後我在加拿大長大，那我到加拿大之後呢，就我從小的時候我就搬過去加拿大了，然後我在那邊有學日語，所以我也會說日語的。
你的中文很標準吧？一點的國語都沒有。
可能有一點點吧，有時候有人聽不到。對。
Okay, so that way he can speak 4 languages. Very surprising. So I think he has a very, very fluent multilingualist. I should ask him some, recipe, some secret to become multilingual. So George, how did you become a multilingual?
So basically it's quite interesting because I was born in Hong Kong, but I moved to Canada quite quickly when I was around 4, 5, or 6. But then after the 3 years I spent in Canada, at that time I completely forgot anything about Chinese. And
really,
so
you forgot about Cantonese?
Yeah, forgot about Cantonese, forgot about Chinese. I don't read any of them, and I don't speak any of them, right? Maybe just some very basic words. So English became my mother tongue. And then after those 3 years, I moved back to Hong Kong to study for 8 years. So at that time, I had to relearn Chinese all over again.
That's when you were 8 years old?
Yeah, 8 or 9 years old around that time. Yeah, and then from there, I graduated high school there, and then I moved back to Canada, and my English level was still at elementary level, but my accent was okay, right?
So when did you go back to Canada? How old were you then?
17.
17. So for 10 years you lived in Hong Kong, and during 10 years you remastered Cantonese.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. And then I moved back to Vancouver. That's actually where I picked up most of my Mandarin. So even though I already had a little bit of a Mandarin background because my mom used to take me back to Taiwan all the time for travel to visit relatives. but I never really needed to speak in that language fluently. So I met a lot of Taiwanese friends in Vancouver, so I kind of picked up the language from there. Yeah.
So in Canada, you picked up Mandarin, 中文,
Yeah.
普通话.
That's right.
I
对。
see, I understand. And what about Japanese? How did you master Japanese?
So Japanese, I wouldn't say I've mastered it yet, but I started learning it when I was high school. I just kind of had fun. I took courses, wasn't really that serious about it. So adding it all up, it's about 3 years of time, 3 or 4 years of time that I studied Japanese. But when I really took it really serious was when the pandemic started. So when the pandemic started, I couldn't do any text messaging. I couldn't really speak at all in Japanese with any native Japanese speakers. But throughout the 2 years, 3 years during the pandemic, I studied really hard to jump from N4 to N5 level all the way to N1, N2 level, right? So right now I'm aiming to complete the JLPT N1 test.
So about English and Mandarin and Cantonese, you really don't have to do study by yourself. You naturally gained the language. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh. Well, as for Japanese, you have to try really hard to master it.
Yes, because I would say I didn't quite create that environment for me. Because for Hong Kong, for Cantonese and Mandarin, I had that environment. All my friends were speaking that language, so I naturally just picked it up.
I understand
Yeah.
that. So among 4 languages, which is the easiest one?
Which one's the easiest one to learn, or which is the easiest one for me?
Oh, for you.
For me, English would be the easiest because I spend most of my time in English. Yeah, so sometimes I would mix in a few English words if I can't find the vocabulary for the other languages. Yeah.
Then what about the most difficult one to master?
So far for me is Japanese.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why is Japanese so hard for you?
I think Japanese is hard because a lot of the expressions are quite different from Chinese and English. But I think the advantage for me in learning Japanese is that because there are Japanese English, like a lot of the katakana, they're transferred from English. So it's very easy for me to remember those words. And of course, I would know kanji. A lot of the onyomi is actually quite close to the Cantonese pronunciation. Yeah, so I can kind of guess how to pronounce those words in onyomi.
Right. So how long have you studied Japanese so far?
So far, I would say 2 or 3 years.
But only
Seriously.
within 2 or 3 years, you can communicate with Japanese very well enough.
Yeah, it's not that
I think it's
difficult
really
to
quick.
have. Yeah, roughly around 1 or 2 years, you'll be able to at least have some kind of casual conversation. I mean, some people would say that they can do it in 3 months, but that is in a very, very immersive environment, right?
So, did I ask you about advice to master languages especially for Japanese?
I would say try to not be
Any languages.
Yeah, any language.
I'm going to ask you about English later. So, is there some secret or some advice to master any languages? How do they should start?
So to start, I would say pick something about that culture behind that target language that you really want to learn, and really try to fall in love with it. Because when you're going to be creating an immersive environment for yourself. So you're going to have to really like something about it. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. For example, for Japanese, I would choose Japanese drama, games, or anime. For German, I would choose, because I really like to learn about their culture for efficiency, and I study classical music, so my favorite composer is Beethoven.
Then is there any special advice for Japanese learners to master English? Because we Japanese have very few vowels, only a, e, will, and consonant is really easy. So we don't have F sound and H sound, like food and food, and R and L sound. We always have a difficulty. and school teachers always tell them to master the language, to master the accent, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
Do we really have to care about that?
Honestly, I don't think you have to care too much about it, especially in English, because in immigrant countries like Canada, the cultural background is very diverse. So people are used to different types of accents, right? So as long as you try to pronounce those words, I think most people would be able to get them. But if they really bother you, I would suggest that you try to immerse yourself into that character so that you can start to hear some of the pronunciations that doesn't belong to your native language. Because you cannot reproduce what you cannot perceive. Even though a lot of the people believe that, oh, you have to learn how to pronounce those words. But the fact is that even if you can pronounce those words, if you cannot hear the difference, you won't be able to reproduce it.
I've heard this kind of funny story. If you go to a restaurant and Japanese ordered rice, but they can't say rice, they say lice.
Yeah.
Then the word lice really come out.
Yeah.
Does it happen?
Yeah, it does. But obviously, like, of course, there is the word lice and the word rice. They both exist. Like lice is like
It's like a little
bug.
Bugs.
Yeah, it's like bugs that get stuck in your head and you can't get rid of them. And then there's rice that you can actually eat, right? So if you say lice in the restaurant, of course, it won't be. Yeah, they can kind of guess by context. You're not wanting the bugs on your head, the parasites on your head, and you actually want the food, right? Yeah, and I don't think Japanese people are the only people that has problems pronouncing rice, the R sound. So I would say don't worry too much about it.
Okay. Or any other advice for Japanese learners to master English?
Yes, definitely. I would say try to be immersive in the English environment. For example, for me, I changed my cell phone and my computers into Japanese,
Really?
like once I reach an intermediate level. Yeah, like try to make it a part of your life, not completely separate. Like you don't separate study from your living. So once you create that immersive environment for yourself, it becomes a lot more enjoyable, and the learning process, it's less noticeable. Like right now, before I tried to count how much time I'm studying Japanese, but I completely lost count right now because sometimes when I'm just reading a book, so would I say that is part of my studying time, or I'm just enjoying it? You know what I mean?
Thank you for sharing that. That's nice advice to know.